It's Monday, November 1st, 2010. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geeknights. Tonight, with resident Geeknight scientist Peter Olson, we discuss science education.
Let's do this.
You know, it's kind of scary that 5 years and 1 day ago, we started Geeknights for real.
No, we didn't. We started it 5 years and like a couple weeks ago.
Well, 5 years and 1 day ago, we published Geeknights to people other than our friends.
Yeah.
We did it for like 3 weeks before that when we used to sing the opener.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that?
That's the stupid Human Trick song.
I'm pretty sure that those episodes are still up.
They are.
In the place.
I have guaranteed that they are publicly available, so nobody can tell me that they are not publicly available.
Yep, they're out there. They were linked to.
And the only reason that I do not just straight up link to them is because I kind of like having secrets. It's like in the old NES days, you know, like finding secrets. It's like, oh man,
But let me tell you, finding the original like beta of Geeknights is a lot like finding the pay me for the door charge. You're never going to get those hours back.
No.
We had a microphone on the other side of the room, that Logitech stick mic pointed straight up, and we sat like 10 feet away from it, hoping that the room would act as a sort of cheap compressor.
But is anyone out there who's got like old arts or old things that they've made that they're ashamed of? Luke Crane. You should put them out there anyway. You know,
in fact, I'm looking for...
It's to say, look at Penny Arcade, right? You don't see them taking down those original strips. In fact, they published a book of those old original strips.
Emily and I are actually going to try to... I got to find them. We're going to try to trade all the essays we wrote in, like, high school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I don't think I have mine, though.
Yeah, me either.
Otherwise, I would do that.
I think I got a bunch of hard drives, and one of them's crashed.
Maybe what we can do is we can just put a Kickstarter and be like, look, everyone send in your essays from high school.
And we'll make a website that people can take those essays and republish them and get A's.
No. We'll just print out
make a book.
We'll make a book with like 100 high school essays.
Then
if it sells, we'll make volume 2.
We can call the book Terribly Inaccurate Representations of Literature and History.
We could be like all 5 paragraphs. And that's the title of the book. 5 paragraphs.
This is actually kind of a good idea. I would read that.
I would. No, see, so fucking...
You gotta read, everyone's
so boring.
Everyone's gonna start with the global statement and then zero in on their thesis statement.
Yeah, anyway. So, woman.
Scott, warm today.
No, not
it's warm in my apartment. My heat was working only in the bedroom, not in the studio.
Yeah, it is warm in this apartment.
But my heat was not working in the studio, the Geeknight studio, nor was it working in the living room or the kitchen.
Right.
But it was working in the bedroom, so I tell the building, they're like, okay, we'll fix it. Apparently by fix it, they meant we'll fix it, we'll turn it all the way up, and we'll leave it on all goddamn day. I got home and it was like 90 degrees in
This is
here.
why you just don't ask for anything.
But then I wouldn't have had heat in the studio, and it's going to get cold. It's going to get
It's
more
already
woman.
cold. It's cold today.
Woman, I about froze my motherfucking nuts off. My love for you is deathless.
It is cold outside.
I'm bound to you by chains that only...
Like, I was like trying to decide, like, how much coat I should wear this morning, and I took not enough.
See, NASA definitely needs to change its focus, but NASA was right on topic. That was actually a long time ago we talked about that on Geeknights here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it is Monday. It's a science day. Before we get to our guest, you said you had some news, and you didn't want to talk about the holographic universe theory because you, much like me, probably have at best a superficial understanding and did not want to be caught generalizing incorrectly.
Yeah, also, I really don't know much about it at all.
I'm excited about it, and I explained it to a bunch of people not on the air.
Poorly.
Because I can explain it poorly, but well enough to where it gets the point across, but without having a record where someone can prove me wrong in subtle and pedantic ways.
Anyway.
All I'm going to say is I think it's really cool, and I'm kind of excited about the fact that we're getting to the point in the world where we can test for the reliability of things like causality or locality. And science always has the boring answer. Like,
it's mostly because we invented cool things like lasers that help you do this.
Yeah, but it's always like if there's a cool option and a boring option, science usually finds the boring option. Like, are there aliens? No. Water on the... No. Is the world just a hologram on a turtle? No. But someday we're going to find something where they're going to be like, yeah, you know what? We disproved causality. Check it out. That electron went back in time and killed your mom. Now what?
So check that. Here's some news that might actually affect your life in a meaningful way. All right.
I have a feeling that the breakdown of causality would affect my life in a meaningful way.
If they broke it down, but I'm just saying if they just disproved it, it wouldn't that information wouldn't change.
A disproving of causality would open up the possibility of free will, actually.
Anyway,
that would be exciting.
It wouldn't be the unit, so society would not change as a result.
No, but I might change. I might go all Dunyain. Anyway.
Anyway, so apparently Google is suing the government, which you can only do with the government's permission, if I recall correctly.
I don't know if the government consented to the suit yet.
Yeah, I don't know either. I don't know how that works.
Neither do I.
What I do know is that they are suing because what happened was there was a bid. You know how they do bids for government contracts, right? It's like, oh, the government wants to build a bridge.
Well, we got to go with the lowest bidder.
10 different bridge building companies say, I will build the bridge for X dollars. And
now,
another company says, I will build the bridge for X minus $10.
Never mind. We did a show, we talked about this a long time ago, where there's a problem where there's a whole kind of line of business where you're not good at what you do, but what you're good at is navigating the American bureaucracy. And restaurants that are like inside of airports, their primary business is filling out paperwork and handling the bureaucracy, not making food, as you can probably tell.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so Google put in a bid to get some part of the government, the Department of the Interior, to use Google Apps instead of Microsoft Office or any, whatever else could be used, right? So they put in this bid. And they got rejected. Boom. Crack-a-lack. And they got rejected again. Double crack-a-lack. And basically, the requirements for this contract were... let me see if the exact words are here somewhere. Yeah, I can't find them right now. But basically, the contract requirements were it has to be Microsoft compatible. So basically, that's like if I put in a bid and I said, our town needs 10 cars.
Ford compatible.
They need to be Fords.
Now here's what I would
argue.
argue.
Auto manufacturer send in a bid, please.
Here's what I would argue. So they didn't say Fords. They said Ford compatible. I would put forth my Chevy and be like, it'll drive on the same road a Ford will drive on. Because Open Office will drive on the same road that Word will drive on, kind of, almost.
Yeah, the point is that basically the government sort of was hindering competition here and sort of giving bullshit.
But here's the question:
corrupt bidding system.
Was it corruption or incompetence? Because
it doesn't matter.
I know it doesn't matter, but I still want to know, because if it's corruption, I expect that, and if it's incompetence, it makes me sad. But I want to know if I should be angry or sad.
You like,
I want to know if I should be angry or sad.
See, I find it strange that you would be angry or sad because, like, if it's incompetence, I expect that, and if it's corruption, I expect that. So it's the same feeling either way.
Yeah, I guess I get angry when someone, like when a fat guy blocks me from the subway. I get angry because he screwed me up. But if a fat guy just is fat, I'm sad because he's fat.
I don't know.
If the government is fat, I'm just sad. But if it's also in my way, I'm also angry.
The thing is, whether it's sad or in your way, you should push it over. It doesn't matter.
Scott, if I push it over, I might kill someone.
Well, Google's trying to push it over, and they might kill Microsoft, so watch out.
The thing is, Microsoft has been doing fine lately. I'm using Windows on my desktop because it's better.
But there's more bad press about Microsoft than like ever before.
I know.
People are looking down on them more than ever before.
And it's unjustified. Like, I agree. Microsoft.
But the thing is, they do make a fuck ton of money from big business contracts. The government being one of them. And if Google can force Microsoft out of the government contract arena, that's going to hurt Microsoft a lot. We're like millions and millions of dollars.
Another way to go about it. Now, this is crazy leftist whack job. What if Microsoft, because Microsoft really is a business, probably needs to move into tablets and mobile stuff and all this kind of modern thing, because Core OS is no longer, I think, a viable business except for proprietary applications.
Well, they pretty much made it a commodity. The browser,
exactly,
and then browsers themselves are commodities.
I feel like operating systems, at least there should be a government branch of Linux or at least the government should fund open source development in some way. And independently, wouldn't it be cool if just the operating system wing of Microsoft, and maybe the document stuff too, was bought by the government, maintained by the government, and just was free?
That's dangerous for the rest of the world to be incredibly scared, and they would not like that at all.
It's dangerous primarily because how many patches would come out after 10 years of
I
government
mean,
control.
think about it this way, right? Okay, so the U.S. government might think that's a great idea, but imagine if the Russian government bought the Microsoft Windows. Very bad news.
Yeah.
So any government buying something like that is very bad
Except
news.
here's what those governments will do. They'll hem and haw, and then like China, remember the Dragon processor? They're like, yeah, Western x86, we'll make our own processor. All
the
right.
thing is, they could probably do it now.
We have reverse engineered the 486. We will compete with your Pentium billions.
If you can make a web browser that plays video is really the limiter, because if you just want to show images and stuff, 46 can do pretty well.
That's actually a fairly lucrative business. A lot of technology, a lot of hardware that the military and the government use have mandates that say they have to be manufactured on U.S. soil by U.S. companies. There's a fairly lucrative business in old technology fabs to make old shit for the government.
Yeah, but the amount of money it costs to create such a business is incredibly high.
But at the same time, if you already have an old fab, rather than tearing it down, you just contract to the government and overcharge them times $1 billion because you're the only game in town.
Plenty of people are doing that already.
Yeah.
So you can't break into that business.
Yeah. At best, you can work for a company that does that, like I once did.
Anyway.
Actually, twice did, but anyway.
The point is, this is pretty exciting because hopefully we can get some more government technology improvements, however slow.
Well,
I mean,
I think it's part of a bigger trend where for a long time, I'd say for like the past 4 or 5 years, up until just recently, we were kind of at a plateau in a lot of kind of our nerdy computer technological stuff. Like there weren't a lot of revolutions happening. And suddenly there's been this spate of lawsuit-related chaos where for a long time, like the patent stuff, where there's a million companies all poised to sue the hell out of each other. And then recently, they all just hit nuke and they all sued each other. And now Google's suing, and all these lawsuits are going to end at some point. And unlike the SEO lawsuit, things are going to change.
I think what it is that for the longest time they were advancing rapidly, so they kept coming out with new things. So everyone was getting new patents and making new stuff and making more money. And now, it's like, what has there really been new recently?
Well, it gets to the point to where
there have been crooks slightly so's, like our CPUs now have more than one core.
It gets to the point where it is cheaper to hire the lawyers to engage in the mutually assured destruction crazy lawsuit than it is to pay an R&D team to come up with something new and patent it
and
first.
like, what are the new things that are happening? We made a social website. We made a slightly different social website. It's like nobody's really making anything that's
but to
super
talk about
new. They're only making things that are crooks slightly so.
To push it in the same direction that we go with video games a lot. I know a lot of you Monday listeners don't bother with the Tuesday night shows. A big problem in the video game industry is that everyone thinks, I want to make a massively multiplayer role-playing game. World of Warcraft is the biggest and best. I'm going to try to compete with them and do the exact same thing they do, and I'll be 1% better, and no one's going to give a shit.
Nope.
And technology, a lot of times, is the same thing.
Everything is the same thing?
Almost everything.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing is that with a traditional sort of business, like, say, a plumber or a carpenter, right? It's like, you don't even have to be better than the other carpenter. You just have to be better than the other carpenter in town. But when you're in the whole world, when you're an international digital business, location don't mean shit except for your taxes, right? You just have to be better.
Don't get me started on taxes.
It doesn't matter where you are. Like, if I open up a dry cleaner, I could be a shitty-ass dry cleaner, but I can open up in a town with no dry cleaners. Boom, I'm in business, baby.
I just pictured a dry cleaner who signed they were called shitty-ass dry cleaners.
That would be the best. I would go to that dry cleaner even if they charge twice as much, just because they're awesome name. And then, like, here's how you get the marketing, right? Is you would take, like, a piece of cardboard that looks like a poop. It'd be like your business card, and you'd put it in the plastic with the clothing. It's like you would pick up your shirts, and they'd be wrapped in plastic, and then under the plastic, it would look like there was a piece of cardboard poop, like, on the...
So actually, this was many months ago when we first moved to the city. Me and Emily are out somewhere, and we saw a local billboard, like one of those low-down billboards out in, like, the Bronx somewhere. And it was Ass Man Proctologist, and it looked legit. And it said, butts are our business.
That's what they are.
That's what that is.
That's what that is.
So I know Facebook isn't something we often talk about. I mean, I don't even have a Facebook account. Not because I'm a curmudgeon, because I graduated before Facebook was available to people who weren't in college.
You should just get one and then don't use it.
Yeah, but I don't want it there festering. I don't want to make sites that are related to me that don't have anything about me on them.
Well, what you could do is you could forward your tweets to it.
Yeah, but that...
Which is what I do. I don't go to Facebook.
But then what's going to happen is someone's going to friend me, like a family member, and then they're going to ask me why they didn't friend me. It's going to be that South Park episode.
You just ignore them. Just don't click on it.
Yeah, and that didn't work so well in South Park.
That's South
And
Park.
clearly South Park is a perfect analog of the real world.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, I think Slashdot is getting surprisingly conservative.
How
And I
so?
think this is happening because
I think you're reading too much Slashdot. It's dead. Stop reading it.
No, it's not dead.
Dig's also dead, so don't read that either.
Dig. I wouldn't say Dig is dead. I would say
It's
that
pretty dead.
Dig was never quite came to be. Dig was like it was this little thing, and it exploded so fast that like in a plonk's time, in a time interval too short to measure, it went from not used by anybody enough to matter to used by everybody and therefore meaningless. There was basically no period at which it was useful.
Yeah.
But my trouble is that it's weird that lately I've been reading Slashdot comments and I've felt that they've been getting more and more conservative. Slashdot was pretty against the dude who was scanning the barcodes and then selling books and making a profit from used bookstores. And they were really mad about my comments in this Facebook article. But basically, the Facebook article was just about the new feature, the Stalker tool, that lets you easily see the conversations that happened that were public between two of your friends. So say you and Scott Johnson were using Facebook and like talking to each other. I could say, show me what Scott and Scott talked about, and it would just tell me because I could see all that stuff anyway. It just takes extant information that is publicly available that both of you consented to make available in Facebook and gives it to me in an aggregated form that I can then read.
All right.
People are losing their goddamn shit over this,
Uh-huh.
as is expected.
Uh-huh.
And I feel like the core problem, because with this whole privacy debate, comes down to the fact that people in America have unreasonable expectations of privacy, and they have unreasonable expectations about the transitive nature of privacy. In fact, one person tried to argue that transitive privacy is not the way to go. And transitive privacy is the only privacy you have. Anything I ever say, if any human being ever hears it, I have to implicitly trust them to use that information in a way that I approve, or I'm fucked. And you know what?
Well,
You're fucked.
you can also legally obligate them to keep a secret.
But if you
with a
tell,
contract.
it depends though. If I tell you something and then I want to make you do a contract after I told you,
No, you have to give the contract before you tell them.
yeah, and even then, one-sided contracts aren't really enforceable in court. And there's,
Yeah, they have to sign the contract.
I guess, I don't know. I feel like this is an issue where there can't be any argument. In fact, I'd go one step further in this whole privacy brouhaha that's brewing now in the tech world, to the point that even non-techs are starting, like even Jon Stewart's making jokes about Facebook. Normal people are starting to like get the fact that Facebook invades their privacy. But I would argue that all of the arguments on either side of the privacy issue are completely moot and pointless.
Except for the one that I make.
Because
all the time.
even if the people who say we don't have any privacy agreed, yes, we should have privacy, it's impossible to have.
Yep.
So even if I agree with you 100%, there is no way to redress your grievances at all. It is absolutely impossible.
It
So
is as impossible
you have
to
asked
give
me-
you privacy on the internet as much as it is impossible to stop piracy. Piracy and privacy, both equally unstoppable. In fact, they are the same thing. They are the transfer and dissemination of information. You cannot stop it. If you if there's something in your brain, at least as of now, you can keep it a secret. But soon,
Not for long.
Soon we'll have mind-reading devices, and no, that is not a joke, right? Until then, though, if you think it's a secret. But if you write it down, if you tell it to someone, and especially if you type it into the internets, you have effectively shared it with the world. That is how the world works. You can't stop it unless you destroy all the computers with some sort of apocalypse.
So
That's the way the world works. Get used to it.
here's my point.
I wrote a blog post about this in like June of 2009, and I haven't had to edit it or clarify it. It is word for word is exactly the same opinion I still have.
Part of the problem
and it
there,
is still the perfect rebuttal to every single privacy article that comes up every week.
and this is my root point. This is the news. People are freaking out about a feature that shows you information that you can already see. And they don't give a shit about Firesheep, which Firesheep
Because they can't see, only nerds see that.
Firesheep does what any tech has been able to do for as long as there's been an internet.
Yeah, I mean, since 1999, right, there's this piece of software called Ethereal, which is later renamed to Wireshark, right? And what this does, it puts your network card, be it wireless or wired, into what is known as promiscuous mode. And if you know anything about how Ethernet or wireless works, basically, when you send packets from your network card on your computer, those packets go to every computer on the entire local network. The thing is they're using these MAC addresses. So basically, the network card, if me and Rim are on the same
Well, you're right, but I want to jump in because modern networks are actually a bit different from that.
Are they? Anyway, the point is, if it's Switch, it's a little different, right?
Everything's Switch.
But basically, to keep it short, if me and Rim are both browsing the web in the same Starbucks, I'm actually seeing everything he's doing and he's seeing everything I'm doing. The difference is our network cards are filtering out, so we're only getting the packets meant for us, like a little, internet sieve.
Now, if you're not using SSL, you don't have that little HTTPS and the little shield or whatever.
HTTPS is a way to encrypt your internet, your web connection, www, right? Between your computer and the web server. So if you visit, say, Amazon, and you don't have HTTPS, then people see everything you're doing. But if you have the S there, then everything between your computer and the Amazon computer is encrypted, and nobody can bust that, or it's incredibly hard to bust that. And if they try to bust it, there'll be all these alarms going off in your browser, like red lights and pop-ups.
Which people will ignore anyway.
They'll ignore it because they're stupid, right?
But I guess the part of the thing is that, one, this actually wasn't a concern for a while. Before there were ubiquitous hotspots and a lot of people who weren't techs had laptops and were connecting them to wireless networks that other people were also connected to that weren't for work. This hadn't been an issue because we had transitioned from flat LAN structures to switch infrastructure where no one can see anyone else's packets.
Yeah.
Short of
like an RIT.
Short of attacks. Like, I could attack old Cisco routers and get it to show me everyone's packets by flooding them and override. Basically,
that is actually an attack, though.
Yeah, they'd get so flooded that they would start broadcasting everything, and then I'd just sniff.
But like an RIT, if I turned on Wireshark or Ethereal,
you wouldn't see shit.
I would see RIM stuff because we had a hub.
Yeah, because we couldn't afford a switch back then.
I wouldn't see anyone else's shit in the whole apartment building, right? But nowadays, if you turn it on, you won't see anyone who's doing anything outside of your house. And if you have a router, routers are switches. They're not hubs. So you're not even going to see the other people in your house.
Well,
unless you're using wireless.
Routers are bridges. They're routers.
Household routers are usually like 4-port switches.
Oh yeah, they'll switch, but they're also a router.
They're switched. You're not going to see anything unless everyone's using wireless.
It depends on how you configure it.
And even if you're using wireless, if one person's on the 2 point whatever gigahertz and one person's on the other gigahertz, you still won't see anything.
That's an aside, but so people are freaking out about Firesheep, at least tech people, but the tech people should realize that back when I had a cable modem, I could see all the traffic of everyone in my neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, basically, all this Firesheep is it's taking a piece of software, a capability of of networks that has existed since the 90s or even older than that, and they just put a good user interface on it. It's basically an old, incredibly easy and trivial hack that has always existed and has always been obvious, but they have made it, noticed by the common person who doesn't understand networking.
I think what we're going to see
making it easy
is a new era of script kiddieism, but it's almost worse. And I'm glad it's happening because we've gone through eras. There was an era where the internet was the wild goddamn west, where I would put viruses on floppy disks, give them to my friends, then hack into their computers from home and steal all their stuff.
Yep.
And that was
you
trivial.
could fucking format their hard drives and all sorts of nasty shit.
What I would always do
shit that I wish people would do these days.
No, what I'd always do is we'd be playing Command and Conquer, and I'd open their CD tray to distract them, and then I'd attack them.
Yeah.
With back orifice.
Yeah.
And I forget what the one with the I forget what it was called now, but it was the one where it had like that torch icon.
I don't know.
Anyway, it was really easy to hack, and it was just a Wild West, and whoever was smarter would just win on the internet. And then we moved on to where professionals started writing viruses, which meant it's all spam and it's all being used to make money as opposed to...
I wish that they would make viruses that erase people's hard drives because then people would actually give a shit instead of freaking just being like, I have 100 viruses and I don't even know or care because they're sending spam and they're invisible.
So we went from a world where people were making merry mischief with the internet to a world where evil professionals are doing evil for profit. And now we're moving to a world where it's not even script kiddies, it's browser kiddies. It's a Firefox plugin.
That's freely available and has an easy user interface on it with icons and pictures.
People were demanding that Mozilla somehow block it, and Mozilla was like, are you kidding? Someone on Slashdot made the best point. They said, never underestimate the power of Scotch tape and a grudge. If someone wants something hard enough, there is nothing you can do to stop them.
Yeah.
Especially...
except fucking encryption. You're not. No one's gonna be able to do
Scott,
anything to you.
Fucking encryption. How does it work? No one.
No.
I mean, are we all right? So, say we want to put up SSL. Half our listeners aren't going to understand that, and they'll see the warning about the self-signed certificate. I don't want to.
I'll just disable HTTP. And it'll be HTTPS only.
Yeah, but do you want to pay someone for a so-called legit certificate?
I can get a legit certificate from Gandhi for pretty cheap, actually.
Yeah, we could get one, but it costs money.
Yeah,
it does cost money.
It does cost money, but it depends also what kind of, that's because SSL is a scam. There's a racket, but I don't want to get into that. We've talked about it before.
I'll put it this way. All the fears of, it's weird. People are most afraid of people who are taking extant information and showing it to you. Information, it's like if someone went into your house, found your bank account, and then told you all the information that was in your bank account and didn't even keep it for themselves. They're just like, hey, here's all this information that you already have.
Hey.
But they're not afraid of the fact that I can just go into a Starbucks and steal 100 MySpace accounts and Facebook accounts and RIT accounts and email accounts and FRC forum accounts, and there's nothing you can do about it except never logging into anything that isn't encrypted on any public wireless ever.
Oh, there is one thing you can do.
VPNs.
No, people were actually saying there was a suggestion that people do an SSH tunnel, right? So I could set up an SSH tunnel, for example, from my laptop to, say, my line
Yeah,
node.
well, that's just a poor man's VPN.
Well, no, the problem with that, right, is the reason that a VPN or an SSH tunnel is not going to cut it, theoretically at least, right, is let's say I make the SSH tunnel to my line node where the website is hosted. That would totally work, right? No one in the Starbucks would be able to see shit. But someone who's on the other side of the line node can see everything anyway. But SSL is the only thing that's going to get you from both ends.
But there are few people. Remember,
unless I'm visiting my own website,
Scott,
which I have both ends.
After you get past the local network, no one but a professional is going to get your unencrypted data.
There still could be evil professionals.
Yeah, but they're a minority. I mean, here's the problem. The problem is people stealing like my Facebook account and causing trouble for me. No one, like Mossad, is not going to go after me out there.
You mean Mossad?
Yeah, what's going to go after me is the dude in the Starbucks who wants to post cockboats on my wall.
That's true, but there could be, and I suspect at least one or two places in the world this is happening, if not more. I'd be very surprised. Where there's some guy at an ISP somewhere who's got like a computer set up, like one U in a rack somewhere, and who's just like foraging tons and tons of accounts into like big bundles and then selling them for like the highest bidder in China or Russia or something.
Be pretty trivial to do.
Absolutely trivial to do. You could go completely undetected. No one would know that there was like an extra computer in a rack with an extra wire. They wouldn't know that. It'd be completely hidden. You could put it in a closet somewhere. Totally get away with it. So you're basically trusting everyone at every ISP everywhere not to be that guy unless you actually get your encryption going all the way to the other end instead of just part of the way.
So, things of the day. What do you got for me, Scott?
Oh, man. If you have never seen, right, like the awesomest model trains in the world, you don't need to see them because here is something that is similar but superior in the eyes of Scott. This
Lionel?
Guy, what?
Some Lionel?
No.
Lion-O?
No. This guy, in his, equivalent of model train room, has made not a set of model trains, but a set of slot cars. However, this set of slot cars is basically a perfect Formula One track.
A lot of people...
With pit crew and such and grandstands and everything.
A lot of people are really down on slot cars because they think...
Even the lighting, it's like, it looks like a racetrack that is lit up at night for a night race.
It's pretty hot, but a lot of people don't respect slot cars enough because they look at it and they think, I don't have to steer. That's stupid. I'll just hold it down the whole time. They don't realize
will just fly off the track.
Yeah, it's all about speed control, much like real racing.
Yeah,
it's actually a better analog for non-race car drivers of race car driving than an actual driving simulator.
Yeah. I mean, basically, if you just hold down the trigger all the way, you'd be like, oh, whoever has the better slot car will win.
Except on little kid tracks where you can just hold it down the whole time.
Exactly. But basically, when you get to when you get to a turn, you have to let go. But if you let go all the way, the car will just stop and you'll get past. And also there'll be other situations like you'd be coming to a part where the tracks cross. So it's like, well, what do? Do you slow down and let the other guy cross over first? Do you try to beat him? If you crash, you crashed if you're actually taking it seriously, right? So
There was that big slot car track system in Beacon or like on the border between Beacon and Fishkill that we never went to.
Yeah, it was attached to that shady bowling alley.
Yeah, I feel like we should have gone there at least once.
Yeah, but
we talked about
it was
going
like
there a lot.
It was a birthday party kind of place. It was not like this, which is like a man's, soul. This guy is obviously, this is his number one hobby. And you look at this, and he has definitely achieved greatness in his hobby. And for that, he is a Geeknights type of person.
So, I'm all about the urban exploration. I used to do it a lot more when we lived upstate because there was a lot of industrial ruins and I could get away with it. Around here, I feel like if I break into an abandoned factory, I'm going to get shot.
You don't go into an abandoned factory, but you want to do in New York City is you want to go into underground things. Like
the things that'll get me shot as a terrorist.
Well, no, you go to like hobo who lives under the street. You go to, there's a hobo down there. And it's like, hey, hobo, what's going on? Nice sewage.
But one thing I've always been fascinated with are empty tunnels, especially abandoned tunnels. Like I was really, when we did that trip, you didn't come, but we went through the Rochester subway. We walked the entire length of the Rochester subway system.
Well, I mean, it's not a tunnel that gets me that I have any interest in. But what I do have interest in is anything where there used to be stuff.
Well,
like civilized stuff, and now
you would have liked
the
Rochester subway because in the Rochester subway, among other things, all the stations were still there, abandoned.
The thing is, as much as I like it, it also makes me sad.
Yeah.
And if I had like powers,
the saddest
part,
part,
basically what I would do with my powers is make things that are out of use in use. Like
the saddest part, there's
like
this
I
one spot.
I go to Queens and I'm like, World's Fair, exist again.
But there's this one spot that was really sad where it looked like the Mines of Moria. There were these intricate Art Deco columns that were gigantic, spanning as far as the eye could see in every direction. And it was just an empty, abandoned place they're going to fill in eventually because they want hobos to live there.
Oh, why don't you just let the hobos live there?
Why do they turn it into a tourist attraction? Build stuff down there.
Why don't they just at least turn it into a paintball airsoft arena?
Oh,
which is
man.
What I think, that's what you should do with all large abandoned places.
Is play airsoft until the
airsoft, paintball, laser
tag.
Yes.
So a year later, the police come, see a firefight taking place, and that's the end of you.
You set it up as a business with a storefront and everything. It's
so
completely legitimate.
What I did not know,
above the table,
a lot of people don't even know that there was a subway in Rochester, New York, of all places. But even fewer people know that there is a series of intricate tunnels connecting large portions of Salem, Oregon.
I never even heard of Salem, Oregon. I've
heard
of Salem, New York, and Salem, Massachusetts.
And you've heard of Oregon, I assume.
Yeah.
Not Oregon.
I also heard of Oregon.
Missouri. But in Oregon, there's actually in Salem at least, there's this huge network of tunnels connecting buildings all over the downtown. And
why was it made?
It was made for various reasons. It evolved over time, and different parts of it arose in different eras. There's some people who are exploring it and documenting it now.
Oregon?
Pretty big.
Really?
It was a boomtown a long time ago. A lot of Chinese immigrants and during Prohibition. But to quote this article, there's an antique bank vault with an intact gold drop from the bank upstairs, a 1920s stairwell that goes way up to nowhere.
Wait. A gold drop? You put gold in it and it falls?
Into the vault.
Oh, well, no. But I mean, gold is fucking heavy. If you drop gold, it's going to get, first of all, it's soft. It's going to get a big old dent in it.
Well, there was probably a dumbwaiter or something. I mean, I'm not...
But then it's not a gold drop. Then it's a gold lift.
It's a gold drop, like a mail drop.
A mail drop just drops the mail via gravity.
Not always. Sometimes it's just a hole you put the mail in.
Someone takes mail elevator, goes tick, 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 tick.
Sometimes you just put it on. Anyway, there's a gold drop. There's a 20s stairway that goes nowhere. An entire 30s grocery store, mostly
intact. Where did the
intact.
stairway originally go?
No one knows. Some building.
Okay.
Kind of like how when they took down the book off in Midtown, and when they took away all the shelves, there was this fancy old metal door connecting to the building next door that's just walled off on the other side.
Whoa.
An 80s disco, and just stuff like that. There's like this whole underground city. And
basically a mall. It's an abandoned mall, but it happens to be underground, making it different from all the other abandoned malls.
Now, because it goes all the way back to the 1800s, some of these tunnels. There's speakeasies down there and bars, and yeah. It is pretty cool.
So here's what we got to do. Every nerd must move to Salem, Oregon.
And we'll take it over.
We're
going to
take it over, and it'll be Nerd Town. And we will turn all this awesomeness into Nerd City.
So we have our guest, Peter Olson, resident Geek Night scientist. Hi, Pete.
So, my name is Peter Olson. I'm a senior food bacteriologist employed by the New York State Department of Agriculture and Markets. My job is to test food products from all across the state of New York for the presence of certain foodborne pathogens. I also do characterization, subtyping, and lots of other complicated science things. So any opinions expressed in this podcast or any writings attached to this podcast that I express are solely mine and are not necessarily reflective of the stance of the Department of Agriculture and Markets. Further, any mention of any specific product, website, a private enterprise of any sort does not constitute endorsement of that thing by the Department of Agriculture and Markets. Thank you.
And we're hoping you could bring us a thing of the day, something we used to ask our guests to do, and then we forgot.
I just might have a thing of the day for you. So
Do you have a thing of the day?
I do. So anyone who knows me knows that I am not necessarily a huge fan of raw milk, but I am. I'm also not really a fan of the Colbert Report either, though I'm not equating those two things. The Colbert Report is definitely better for you than raw milk, far less likely to give you serious gastroenteritis. So,
as someone who has experienced severe gastroenteritis and been hospitalized, yeah.
As much as people out there probably won't like me saying this, I also kind of agree. Like, you know, Colbert obviously has his shtick.
Yeah.
But it's like, I personally find it to be only tolerable for like a short amount of time.
Yes, if Colbert had just made a movie that was the Colbert Report,
would have been much
like
better.
Borat, that would have been great.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like if you have one joke and you do the joke every day, it's like it
Well,
gets...
notice how at the rally I went to, they basically had him up there in character, and then they killed his character so they could have the serious talk.
Exactly.
Yeah, he definitely did much better as Stuart Straight Man. But so anyway, every now and then the Colbert Report does a piece or a segment that I do happen to like, and one such segment aired about a month ago now, a little less than a month ago, earlier in October, and the story that he discussed concerned a raid by the FDA on an establishment called Rawsome Foods.
I must say their name is good.
It's expected, really.
Well, I mean, if they're selling, say, beef, I mean, I eat raw beef and enjoy it.
And he was ironically saying that the government was correct to raid them, and since his character is supposed to be the negative, he was implying that the government should not have raided them.
Yes.
Which is
really
funny.
not the case. Well, it's an interesting story. The allegations were that Rawsome Foods was illegally selling raw milk.
They
Shock
probably were. I can tell it by their name.
And they did indeed
Stoner's Pop Palace.
We're talking about your false advertising.
It's taking it back a ways. Woo. But yeah, no, they found unlicensed raw milk in this establishment and shut them down. And there was a video of the feds coming in with guns drawn, and it was very dramatic. But you know,
probably need that because the hippies will friggin' fight back.
They take this
with
pretty
what?
seriously.
Like in Lock, Stock with the BB gun.
Exactly.
Oh man,
you didn't lock the friggin' cage.
But there's a clip out there, and this segment is interesting for a number of reasons. It features David Atchison of the FDA, who is a fantastic speaker, very intelligent man. He gives a lot of very great information.
Is he like the head of
no,
the FDA,
he's not the super head of the FDA, but he's a great communicator. He
Isn't
was
this
brought
like
on board relatively recently, and he's been great for the agency.
Isn't there
just
like
been fantastic.
isn't like the Surgeon General or someone technically the head of the FDA?
It's complicated.
Like that?
It's really complicated.
Okay, don't explain it.
I won't.
Okay.
I didn't intend to. There's no intent there.
Good.
So the situation itself is also interesting because Rawsome Foods was selling raw milk illegally, but it's legal to sell raw milk in a grocery store in the state of California if you go through the proper licensing procedures.
So they didn't even bother to go through the licensing procedures.
Yeah, no, it was just laziness. But the reason I'm linking to this, so as a scientist, I encounter a lot of bullshit explanations for things in my day-to-day life. And of course, they contribute heavily to my predilection for drinking gin. So this one particular gentleman that they interviewed from Rawsome Foods explains why he drinks raw milk. And you must understand, I've heard a lot of explanations as to why people might drink raw milk.
The only legitimate reason I can take from someone is it tastes better, and it's like, is it worth it to risk death and illness for that better taste? And if they say yes, well, that's it's only them drinking it.
There is another guy. There is a guy who actually says, and I'll spoil this little bit of the interview. He actually says something I agree with, which is that if I want to drink raw milk and I know it's going to give me dysentery, then it's my right anyway to proceed as long as I can consent to that.
I read an article recently talking about how there's been a rise of tuberculosis in a couple of places
near
the Mexican border
God.
because of people taking raw, poorly processed milk and cheese.
It is hypothesized that Mycobacterium tuberculosis, human-infecting tuberculosis, actually evolved from the naturally occurring mycobacteria that are present in raw milk, and they evolved and adapted to human hosts, and that's how we got the tuberculosis that we know now. It actually came from raw milk.
So if pasteurization had been invented and disseminated earlier, there would be no tuberculosis, possibly?
It is possible. Obviously, it is hard to go back 300 years and research what happened then exactly.
Not if we disprove the holographic universe.
Oh, you and your holographic universe. But anyway, so there's one guy.
Your mom's a holographic universe.
They interview. Listen, my mom is a lot of things, but I can assure you she is not holographic.
Or pasteurized.
Or pasteurized. That would be kind of gross. But listen, this one guy explains why he drinks raw milk, and all I can tell you is that it's the most outrageous explanation I've heard in my time as a scientist. And I will tell you something. I've heard some pretty outrageous stuff. So I'm going to link this video, and I hope you guys enjoy it. And yeah, you get a kick out of it.
All right. So very briefly, the meta moment. The Geeknights book club is World War Z by Max Brooks. I'm reading it. Scott is not.
I'm going to read it pretty soon.
You're not reading it now?
Not this very second, no.
You gonna get to it?
I'm doing a podcast right now. Yes, very soon.
All right.
I've been playing some video games.
Yep, we're going to be at MagFest doing one or more
That's a long time
panels.
from now.
We're going to be at PAX East. We're going to be at PAX
also a
Prime.
long time
We're
from
going to be at
now.
PAX East. We're going to be at PAX Prime. And we're probably going to be at Anime Boston. And I think that's all the meta that matters. The e-commerce for Geeknights and our old t-shirt are going to be up relatively soon.
Oh, snap.
The last regulatory hurdle is complete. We are now legally authorized to sell t-shirts. It's just a matter of me turning on the website
All right.
and figuring out what I have to file after we sell to the first person in New York. But that's beside the point.
All righty.
So, yeah, tonight we thought, before we had Pete on the show, this was quite some time ago, and we talked about pseudoscience, the Randy bullshit that we're so angry about all the time. And Pete's a scientist, so we thought he'd be extra angry about it.
Pete angry.
So now we thought we'd talk about science, but we realized science is not, there's not a lot to say other than it's science, it's right.
Gee,
There's a lot of
what a incredibly specific topic that we can, discuss for 30 minutes. Science.
Yeah.
But one thing that we definitely can talk about, because it's something very important that I think we all agree needs to be addressed, is the state of science education in the world.
At least in the United States, right? I mean,
I
I'm
intend
sure
to
there's
talk
some
about
pretty
the United
good.
States.
I'm pretty sure there are other countries where science education is quite good, and other countries where it is perhaps even worse. But
Yes,
the United States is the country which we know the most about.
So the state of science education in the U.S., huh?
I
Is
mean, Pete,
it-
how do we, I guess the fundamental question is, how do you teach science? What constitutes a good science education?
That's a tricky part, and a lot of how we've taught people science has been it's been a result of how science was 40 or 50 years ago, back when the people who were teaching did science and knew things. And science, 40 or 50-year-old science isn't really that useful these days. Science can be invalidated in the span of a year or two, or
So
2
it's
weeks,
like, so you're saying,
in some
is
cases.
it because the science is moving too fast to update the textbooks, or is it because
Well, it's
somehow science is fundamentally different now than it was then?
It is moving faster than we are updating it. I would contend.
Mhm.
As for science itself, hasn't changed. I mean, everybody throws out the word science this, science that. I think XKCD addressed this very well in the fantastic comic with Feynman rising from the dead and smacking people down because they were bitching about Mythbusters. The core of science will never change, which is that ideas are tested by empirical experimentation. That's it. It's rooted in the most fundamental of skeptical philosophy. And until something like there changes, then the root of science is never going to change. It's investigation.
Do you think it'd
We
be
take
easy?
an idea and we
You think it'd be
investigate.
easy to teach people? All right, if you don't know how something works, try to figure it out, come up with an idea, and test it and see if you were right.
Well, the problem was, for the longest time, our education system was built around teaching people information that we knew. Because there was a period of time,
Like when they
in
taught me
which-
there were 5 kingdoms, and they taught me that
Yes.
the
Where
Bernoulli's
you could-
principle, you flew because the air was moving faster on top because of the shape of the airfoil.
there was a time way back when you could reasonably know pretty much all there was to know in science. You could be a scientist. You could work in the field of science because there was just one.
You could be
And-
mad.
Yeah, you could be a little crazy. And now we live in an era of unprecedented access to information and unprecedented ability to gather and disseminate information.
Except scientific studies, which are incredibly difficult to get a hold of.
That's part of the issue. I could talk about that for a while, and I might. But one of the problems I've seen, at least, and in my day-to-day duties for the agency for which I work, I do have an opportunity to work with students at different grade levels, usually college and post undergraduate, graduate students working in various programs.
Well, it wasn't that long ago that was peers, and now it's
Now it's
students.
children.
Yeah,
Yes.
kids. And I can tell you that I get, the area in which I'm located in the
These are people
capital
who are
district
trying
in New
to
York.
be scientists, right?
Yeah, these
I
are people
mean,
who are trying to be scientists, who come from reasonable backgrounds,
they
who've gone
went
to
school.
schools.
They didn't just go to public school and take science class. They actually went to school for science.
They took microbiology courses, and they took physics courses, and they took math, and they are in programs and are allegedly, because I only have an undergraduate degree, these
They're
people pursuing
specializing.
upper level degrees should hypothetically be more knowledgeable in the field than I am, and that is unfortunately often not the case. I get to experience a wide range of knowledge bases from these different students, and I say, what the heck is going on? Some
Is
of
it
these
because
kids
they went to different schools, or
I have not done sufficient experimentation to draw a correlation, but I can tell you that my coarse, completely unscientific observation is that it doesn't matter. It really just seems to vary with the individual level, and I'm not quite sure yet what it is that varies from individual to individual that makes one a better candidate for being a scientist than the other. But I can tell you that a lot of these kids that I have taken under my wing started off knowing jack all about science after going through high school and an undergraduate program. Some of the most basic tenets seem to escape them. And I can also tell you that it's not limited to just undergraduates. It goes to PhDs. It goes to people who've been in the field for 30 or 40 years. Sometimes it seems that people just lose their grip on the fundamental aspects of science.
Well, I remember a very poignant moment in my, educational career. I was in 10th grade. I was taking physics in high school. And it was the third week and we were doing experiments, and we went outside because it was nice out. And we learned all these methods to calculate how far away the sun was from the earth. And we were supposed to figure out how far away the sun was from the earth using the materials we had available. So we did it. And, I was off by 4 orders of magnitude because that's what my calculations told me.
Yeah.
And everyone was way, way off. And afterward, he asked us, all right, we were way off. And a lot of people were balking yeah, we were way off. Why are we even bothering with these experiments? And he asked us very simply, all right, so how do we know what the right answer is? And someone said, well, it's in the textbook. And then, but they were smart. They were smart. They stopped as soon as they said that. And they said, oh, wait, how'd they get the answer in the textbook? And the teacher was like, by doing exactly what you did, only not being incompetent. And then we went on and learned how to do it better.
And it's a little disconcerting that I'm fairly certain those conversations don't happen as often as they need to in science classrooms. Obviously, I haven't studied science classrooms extensively. It's been a long time since I've been in a high school classroom or even in an undergraduate college classroom. But I can tell you that my experiences and from what I have gathered of other people's experiences from talking to them, there's really not so much emphasis on the critical thinking aspects of science, which is really the most critical component of any scientific investigation, is how to take these observations and these data that you've gathered and analyze them and how to break them down into their fundamental components and understand how they interact with each other. What do they tell you? What conclusions can you draw? And how are your conclusions limited, which I find is one of the things that gets lost in the public perceptions of science is whenever a study comes up, we see this all the time. Somebody says, science cures
There's
cancer,
an XKCD about
something
this
like
also.
that. Yes,
There's an XKCD pretty much about everything.
just read XKCD. Randall Munro was right about a lot of things.
Yep. That was the other discussion about significant digits.
Yeah.
And
See, the thing is, Pete,
Oh
though,
my
it's
God,
you're
thanks.
upset because you've got these people who went to school and learned some science, but then it turns out they didn't actually learn the science, right?
Right.
But here's the thing. You got to look at us computer people. They don't even have high school classes in computers. And when they do,
Yeah.
they're not mandatory. And when they do, it's not taught by anyone who knows any. I mean, at least.
I mean, you look at the average freshman computer science or IT person, even at a prestigious tech school, they come in, and unless they're a nerd who already knows how to code, it'd be the equivalent of someone coming to you, they've got their bachelor's, and they're like, I'm ready to do some science, and they don't actually know anything more than that.
They don't even know how to use a calculator.
All they know are a bunch of facts and things.
Oh, they
like
don't even
that.
know
They don't even know
facts.
facts.
They
know
don't
even less.
They're like, I learned how to turn my graphing calculator on. Teach me how to do science with it.
Yeah, no, I've encountered roughly that same level of competence.
Whoa, that's pretty scary. I mean, consider
So not often. Usually most students I get have memorized factual information and can reproduce it at me when I ask them. Then I ask them, what does that mean? How did we arrive at that data? How can you apply these data in other situations? They go, I don't know.
See, I feel like I had an extraordinary, at least science education compared to other high schools because these things were dealt with very well. Like, for example, like with these examples.
I mean, why did
the professor would always the teacher, we'd always do an experiment or something or learn an equation. Like he said, simple ones. He said, F equals ma, force equals mass times acceleration. And he put it on the board and he paused and he looked at us and he asks, what does that imply? And we went for a week on just the implications and the ramifications of that.
Mm-hmm.
And is it just that no one does that? I mean, it wasn't hard to have the science education I had.
I know. I mean, I'm not a science genius by any stretch, but it's like I think that I know things. At least,
a lot of people think they know things. I think we could point to a lot of people who think they know things. And this is part of the problem with science education. Science is all about figuring out how little you actually know and rectifying that problem. And we get into this. We tend to get into a situation where people will draw conclusions and say, "Well, this conclusion is definite," because they sort of misinterpret some of the fundamental aspects of science about how we have a theory or perhaps some set of conclusions that are valid until something more valid comes along. And then people will often engage in confirmation bias and other such things to shoot down every single competing anything that comes along to try to keep clinging to this principle that they found so many years ago. And this is something that I've observed, not just in scientists in general and in science fields at large, but out in the public at large too.
So would you agree with this? I have this feeling, just based on the scientists and the teachers and the professors I've met over the years, that the ones who were the best were the ones who's they got more joy from disproving something than from verifying something. Like the people who were really driven were the ones who love nothing more than to take some established theory and absolutely disprove it, or even their own theory and disprove it and be like, all right, check this out. I disproved my theory that I spent 40 years working on. How awesome is that?
It's you. Well, there aren't very many of those people. There's a story in The God Delusion, I think it was. Richard Dawkins reflected a story about a scientist who had talked about, I forget the exact theorem he had posited.
I think I remember this anecdote.
But anyway, he had been a scientist for 40 years, and then he walked up and he congratulated the guy who just proved him wrong. He said, I've espoused this thing for 40 years, and you just proved me wrong. And everybody clapped their hands raw, and I got to tell you, that doesn't happen.
Didn't it happen that one time?
Yeah,
or is that a made-up story?
It happened that one time, probably. I don't know. I wasn't there. I'm not Richard Dawkins. But it's nice to think that is what happens. But scientists are people. People are fallible. And the majority case is that a PhD will cling tenaciously to the research they've been doing for the past 40 years because it's what they've been doing for the past 40 years. They depend on that research. So it's nice to say that the principles of science are that we will abandon something as soon as it is disproven, but it is not often that somebody will just abandon a particular theory wholesale.
So we're screwed. I mean, that's the scientists. What about the non-scientists?
You guys are pretty much hosed. You have no hope, whatever. Just give up and let the scientists tell you what to do.
But this is sort of a separate problem, right? The problems between scientists in academia and fighting over getting published and getting, all sorts of stuff like that, right? It's like that is sort of a separate problem that perhaps is intertwined with the problem of the students not learning anything, right?
Oh, yeah,
so how does the one affect the other?
Well, when you have scientists who have to compete very viciously for funding that's coming from many different sources, a lot of them will try as hard as they possibly can to get students to produce as much work as possible You'll often find this in colleges where a professor has a laboratory and they use their graduate students or undergraduate students as slave labor to produce as much work as possible, to get as much noise out there as they can, to make as big a name as possible.
I wish I could do that. I want to get some interns to like migrate machines.
Yeah,
I gotta tell you,
student.
I get interns every now and then. It is pretty awesome to have interns. I'm not gonna lie. And I even get full-fledged employees that I can boss around to. It's a lot of fun. But there are some side effects to this, and it is the person who is willing to make the most noise makes the most noise, and they get the most funding, whether or not their science is the best or perhaps the most useful or what should be being done. Now I don't mean to disparage any scientist who is doing a lot of hard work, because I know many, many very hardworking scientists who publish a lot of really good, earth-shattering, groundbreaking data.
Wait, those are the mad scientists, shattering the ground, breaking the earth.
Yeah, all scientists at some point, especially when you publish very extensively, go a little mad. So we have this massive problem. Really, it's just pervasive. Everybody kind of misuses the scientific method, one of the scientific methods. There really is no global method, but a lot of people just kind of spin science to suit their own ends, and it's unfortunate. Science, the scientific process, is easily spun because it's neutral by default. It doesn't care about what you want. It just gives you information, and then you have to interpret.
So how did it get this way? Was it ever good before, or was it never good?
No, it was probably never good.
Okay.
Well, it was never. It was never.
You say it was never good, but meanwhile, we still have a lot of awesome science.
Oh, yeah.
See, I would argue that the scientific process is fine. The people interpreting the results are fallible.
It's how it's the problem we have now is that science, as I said before, used to be a thing that you could just know. You could grasp all of it. There used to be less information. We just had less. We knew less. When we knew less things, it was easier to figure out those few things that we knew. Really easy. It's sort of like when there were only 4 books, they were all really good books because they were the only 4 books we had.
So it's like we had the specialization, and the specialization has caused and they've all sort of
it's not really the specialization.
Together.
The techniques of science, like how we've applied them for the longest time, has always been exploratory in nature, finding more information. I can give you an example, the kind of work that I do, where we test food samples from across the state of New York for various pathogens. I generate a shocking amount of data in a week. You could take multiple PhDs and give them graduate projects, build entire careers analyzing data that I've generated in a week.
Alrighty.
And it's pretty shocking, the amount of data that we can actually produce. And the problem we have now is that, except for scientists, most people are not very good at processing that amount of information. There's literally just too much stuff out there.
Well, that's the argument I've been making for a long time, and a lot of other people have too, that knowledge of statistics is probably one of the most important things we could teach now, because a lot of people don't understand the ramifications or the meaningfulness of data.
That is pretty much the critical problem.
The awesome TED Talk I saw, basically this guy made a good few-minute argument. He was basically like, look, we do all this math in school, and we build up to calculus is like the big thing you're building up to, right? But calculus, almost nobody, very few people actually need or use calculus on a day-to-day basis.
Yep.
As fun as it is.
Probability and statistics, everyone needs to use every day, even probably before they're going to learn it in school.
Yep.
You need to use it from the time you're like 2, right? Yet you don't learn that unless you learn it like in college extra. So he said that we should have probability and statistics be like the thing.
See, now I think you can
learn
trick people. I think this is where gaming can be used very well, because the quickest way to learn statistics is to lose money playing craps.
Yep. We'll get that instituted in high schools.
You know
across
what?
the
If they had
nation.
craps
I'm sure
tables
people
in
love
schools,
that.
all the kids would show up.
Yeah, or just D&D. I mean, every lunch period, all through middle school, we would play poker for money.
Well, didn't you see that guy who was talking about how his kids got really good at doing math by playing Pokemon, the card game, because they basically had to be like, how much damage does he do? And he was doing math really fast, so he could play Pokemons better.
Yep.
That's how I learned computing. I wanted to play DOS games.
Me too.
And this is part of the problem we have with getting information to people, is you have to present it to them in such a way that it makes sense to them, that they can reason with it. And a lot of these problems are So you publish a scientific journal article, and I'm going to set aside the fact that 99.999% of you can never access the full text of an article to actually look at the testing that they do, and the greater problem, which is that 99.999% of you wouldn't even understand what the hell that means, even if you could read the whole article.
Yeah, I've
But
had that
beyond
problem. I asked Lisa, there was some article, I forget what it was, and I was like, yeah, I read the abstract, it was really awesome. And she's like, I can get you the real article. I'm like, yes, now I will understand it.
No, you won't.
Oh, it's a lot of words I actually don't recognize, and looking them up
Yeah.
did not help.
Nope.
Yep, that's often
Because
how
when
it
you
goes.
look it up, the definition consists of more words you don't recognize.
Yep.
But the major problem is that
You know, it's worse when they consist entirely of words that I recognize and yet combined mean nothing to me.
I wish that
Yeah.
they would just translate them into plain English.
there's no way to.
It has to be possible.
Well, the part of it is there is of course a
Scott-
problem with the way that journal articles are published. You pay by the word to publish an article.
That is
which
ridiculous.
is why scientific writing is often incomprehensible. We basically condense it to the point where it's barely recognizable English to get it out there to get as much information into as small a space as possible.
But at the same time, Scott, you want to translate it into like simple English, like component.
No,
That's
no,
like
no.
making
But they
making
could-
assembly
But
language
if they
and telling
didn't,
people to read
if they
it.
would just write it, normally, just
What do you mean normally?
just like the way that you would say it if you were explaining.
So
it
you're
Well-
trying to
a
explain that
fellow
the peroxisome does the whatchamacallit.
Well,
to
well.
the
If you were
who's-its.
explaining it to the scientist next to you, and you had all the time in the world, and you just had to explain the
You
whole
would-
thing, to
you would
him,
use
That is
scientific
what
lingo.
you should write.
Well, no, we would use scientific lingo because that's what we do.
Yes,
Because
but it would
Scott-
not be nearly as incomprehensible.
Scott,
as the
yes,
way
it
no,
would.
it's
no, it
written
actually
in
would be
the-
more.
Scott, when I tell you for computing, I'm like, yeah, we'll set up an SSH tunnel for the people. Don't that doesn't
Yeah.
mean anything to most
No.
people.
And because scientists are usually extremely busy people, we don't have a lot of time to talk to anyone very extensively about anything, so we need to convey the information to you as quickly as possible. I hope you're noticing a trend here about how science information is conveyed to people. It's as quickly as possible, as dense as possible, as much information as we can in as small a space as we possibly can.
Or as little information as we can in the smallest soundbite as we can.
Possibly. So, interestingly enough, I can give you one example of somebody who is doing something right here. There is a project run by a guy in Kansas State University named Doug Powell, in conjunction with several other people, this guy named Ben Chapman from Canada. It is called Barf Blog, and this relates specifically Barf Blog. This relates very specifically to food safety science. I'm a food safety microbiologist. This is what I do. It's my bread and butter. It's very public health related.
Is
That
it raw
was-
butter?
That was raw butter.
Man, what would raw butter even look like? It'd be all like curdly and
I've seen raw butter
smelly.
before in the midst during things
I mean,
that
it
I
wouldn't
can't
even be
tell you about.
appetizing.
But no, it's not appetizing. It's smell.
Like
You
you,
know
just
what a
take the
cow-
raw milk
you-
from the
listen,
cow, you put it in a butter
Do you guys
churn?
know what a
Ugh.
cow smells like? You ever smelled a
Yes,
cow? You
it
ever
smells
been
like
right
poop.
next to a cow?
Smells like poop
cow.
times 10.
Well, grab the udder and just tug a few times. It's a little more complicated than that. Don't do that. You'll get kicked. But
Yeah, you gotta
But
kind of
if
like squeeze. I've milked cows.
but there's a lot of poop around the udder, around the cow. The milk smells like poop all the time. A lot of raw milk products smell very
As a
vaguely
kid, I
like
watched
poop.
a farmer
all the
literally squirt it into his mouth.
Yeah, I
Ugh.
cannot. That is so unsanitary.
Why don't you
So
just have something?
inadvisable.
Maybe I have a theory. Farmers scat. It makes sense.
I'm the scat
What? Oh
man.
my God, Scott. I can't talk to you right now. So anyway, Barf Blog. It is a blog, and I'm going to tell you that you should read it. I don't know if you want to subscribe to it because they post like 40 things a day.
Whoa, that is a serious
So
blog.
it's a hardcore blog. These guys are totally dedicated to it. And what they do is really neat. They take all of this crazy food safety information and they make cool infographics. They make plain language articles. They summarize information in a way that is accessible to the modern reader, to, Joe whoever in Wichita, Kansas. Anybody can read these articles and understand what
Even
they are
if
talking
they have
about.
a 5th grade reading level, or does it need at least?
You need a reasonable adult reading level. Okay,
Because
we'll give you that.
newspapers are 5th grade reading.
I would
level.
say if you are probably 16 years old,
Okay.
you can grasp Barf Blog well enough. So they condense these articles into plain language that is understandable to modern reader. And
Scott, that's exactly what you want.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic movement. I think more areas of science need to do things like this. It's very small. It's a very very focused topic, but it's a great start. And I tell everyone about it. I get a lot of my food safety, articles that I spit out to other people about it. I say, just go read these guys. They'll explain it to you because I don't have time to sit here for 3 hours and explain to you the full details of why this particular outbreak is significant. These guys already did it, and they're very good at it. So
maybe that's what we need. Maybe we need someone to basically, if I go to PubMed or whatever, and there's some scientific paper that I can only see the abstract for, right? Even if I could read the paper we already discussed, I won't be able to understand it. But maybe we need some guy whose job it is basically do the Barf Blog job and write a normal article like that for every single paper.
That's the easiest and the first place to start. What I would like to see eventually is, and this is one of my pet projects, is full public health and, full public science education reform to shift away from information gathering to information processing, because we can gather information really well. We need to teach everyone, every individual person needs to be able to understand how to process information, how to grasp the limits of a study. What is this actually saying? And, how far does the scope actually apply? And that's something that we need to do in the classroom, at home, in every media to which people are exposed. And that's really what the mission needs to be. We really need to, instead of just throwing around pretty charts to spin our points, we really need to break things down and explain them and explain to people how they work and how you draw those conclusions. Because until we do that, normal people are going to look at information and just believe it because they don't know how to process it. They don't know how to question it. They don't know how to think about it critically. And that problem now, we actually have people who interpret and present information. This is something that we've found in doing consumer studies, how people respond to package labeling on foods. This is how consumers get a lot of their safety information. It comes from the people selling them the product. And the people selling them the product know how to interpret the information to make it most attractive to the person who is trying to buy it.
Supports the immune system.
Things like that. And there are all kinds of things wrapped up in that. And people are very, very, very good at staying within the bounds of the law and allowing people to draw conclusions based on the things they have never actually said, but using all of the other details about packaging or presentation or advertising.
If I eat Cheerios, I won't have a heart attack and die. Yeah, okay. It's because there's a picture of a heart on it.
Right.
It's
and because they've thrown some information at you and you say, wow, that must be good. Or, organic food must be better for you, so I'm going to buy nothing but organic food, or, all natural local food. Yay. There are all kinds of examples of these sorts of things. And while they often have a degree of scientific merit, until we can get people really able to investigate and ask the right sorts of questions, we'll basically have a population that just believes what other people tell them. And that is sort of the antithesis of science. Everybody kind of needs to turn into a skeptical jackass in order for science to work.
This has been Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music, Kat Lee for web design, and Brando K for the logos.
Be sure to visit our website at frontrowcrew.com for show notes, discussion, news, and more.
Remember, Geeknights is not one, but 4 different shows. Sci-Tech Mondays, Gaming Tuesdays, Anime Comic Wednesdays, and Indiscriminate Thursdays.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution 3.0 license. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night. One hit. I just jabbed like crazy.
So you'd hit that, you jabbed like crazy until you got it in somewhere?
I don't think there's anywhere to get it in.
Well, there clearly is. There's at least one place to get it in. Possibly 2.
But poop is coming out.
Poop's coming out of your mouth? You want to do your news first or want me to do mine
I got
first?
an opening bit.
All right. So let's do the opener, and then we're good.
Or your mom, or Traps. Or Street Fighter.
And I got a brief opening. You can do your real opening. It's Monday, November 1st.
You didn't even look at me. I was yawning for like a whole minute. That's why I didn't say anything.
This happens very commonly.
Like
Hey!
you started while I was yawning, mid yawn. You couldn't even look to make sure that I was like,
I don't know. I don't have to look at you. I was looking at my
the yawn
monitors.
began well before you began.
I got a yawn now.
Yawning is contagious, you know.
Oh.
And they still don't know the purpose of yawning.
Fuck.
Yawn.